From thousands of dollars worth of treasure to brand new phones and ancient cities. Let's dive into the water and see what we can find. Imagine going to the river to enjoy a boat ride. Who wouldn't want to take a couple of pics to make the memories of this trip last forever? Oops, the water splashed. Luckily, you've taken precautions and put your gadget in a waterproof bag. But what if you drop your phone to the bottom of the lake along with this case? This is what happened to some people. A scuba diver and a YouTuber dived into a river popular with tourists and lost some of their gear worth $20,000, including new iPhones and some jewelry. Oops. You might be familiar with the image of a car getting pulled out of the water, either from the movies or TV news. Large cargo vessels sometimes sink, and trucks inside them go along. That's what happened with the Thistlegorm wreck. It sunk in 1941 in the Red Sea, and these Bedford trucks were inside. Want to see something more valuable, like treasure? A British cargo ship was carrying a heavy load of silver ingots, but the vessel sank. Treasure seekers knew there was silver on the ship. Since the 1940s, they've been looking for it. The Odyssey Marine team got lucky. They made the discovery in 2011. The treasure was more than 14,000 feet below the surface. The ship had carried more than 110 tons of silver ingots. Finders keepers! The Odyssey team kept 80% of the treasure and gave 20% to Her Majesty's Treasury. Of course, there were more items on the ship, like letters, teapots, and silk sheets. You can see them in the exhibition called Voices from the Deep at London's Postal Museum. Now how about some underwater art? Sure, here you go, Polynesian moai statues. These statues have been discovered in several areas across the world. For instance, Easter Island is full of different size statues, but many of them can also be found in Cancun, Isla Mujeres, and Punta Nizu, Mexico. Seeing full-body statues from thousands of years ago under the water would probably be a lifetime experience. Gold coins are also popular items found in shipwrecks. Many divers come across coins worth a lot of money. But there's one diver in Florida who truly hit the jackpot. In 2015, they stumbled upon nearly $1 million worth of treasure. The discovery was 51 gold coins, 40 feet of ornate gold chains, and a rare coin that was made for Philip V, the King of Spain. They were once frightening and dangerous, and they still look spooky. Yo-ho! I'm talking about pirate ships. One pirate shipwreck from the 18th century was excavated off the coast of Colombia in 2015. The treasure found there was worth between $4 and $17 billion. It contained precious stones, gold, and many other items. The next one is an underwater city. Neapolis is a city washed away by a tsunami. It was built on the coast of North Africa nearly 1,700 years ago. Divers uncovered the city's remains in 2017. Researchers have also discovered Roman columns, as well as household goods and tools. Now, let's go all the way back to 1503. Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama was fighting a storm when he lost his ship Esmeralda. The ship was discovered in 1998, but it had to wait for more than a decade to be excavated. Researchers found navigational tools there. They didn't have as much value as Spanish gold, but they were historical treasures. Now, in Amsterdam, they fish for bikes in canals. 1/3 of working Amsterdammers cycle to work. Others use their bikes for different purposes, like exercising, going shopping, and so on. There are more bikes in Amsterdam than permanent residents. Unfortunately, many bicycles and even some cars end up in Amsterdam's canals. The fact that Amsterdam has 165 canals with a combined length of 60 miles doesn't make the authorities' job easier. Obviously, the owners don't throw their bikes into the water. Bikes can end up in the canals because of strong winds, vandalism, theft, or by accident. Every year, authorities fish up between 12,000 and 15,000 bikes. Our next one is a lost city. Heraklion was ancient Egypt's gateway to the Mediterranean. It became submerged and hidden under the sand. This city was famous. Maybe you've even heard about it. It was mentioned in the legend about Helen from Sparta and Paris from Troy. So, how was this ancient city discovered? In the early 2000s, a team of divers found a huge fragment of rock on the seabed and took it up to dry land. It turned out that it was a piece of the statue of Hapi, who was the lord of the river of ancient Egyptians. The team continued searching and found 6 other pieces. Around them, they saw temple ruins, pieces of pottery, jewelry, coins, oil lamps, and so on. Even an old copy of the New York Times. Nah, not really. Granada Underwater Sculpture Park is the world's first, what else, underwater sculpture park. Why is this park so special, besides being located in the beautiful waters of the Caribbean? You can see the park on a snorkeling or scuba diving trip. The sculptures are about 9 to 16 feet underwater. The atmosphere and the experience itself make it special. The sculptures are made from concrete and steel. Some of them weigh as much as 15 tons. They're covered with underwater creatures. The statues were put there to help protect reefs, maintain the health of the ecosystem, and restore underwater life in that area. Now, submarines are designed to go underwater, so maybe you wouldn't expect to see them on this list. But submarines do, in fact, sink. Divers have discovered many submarines. For instance, an Australian submarine was found off the coast of Papua New Guinea more than a century after it had sunk. Now here's another submerged city, but this one was left underwater on purpose. You can see the ancient ruins of Lion City in a lake in China. This lake was created in 1959 when the valley, at the base of Five Lions Mountain, was flooded to create a hydroelectric power station. The 1,400-year-old city, now ruins, got submerged by this flow and stayed this way for over 50 years. It lay untouched at the bottom of the lake until its exploration started in 2001. Divers found out that many structures, carvings, guardian lions, and arches were still preserved. Researchers mapped and documented Lion City. They also looked for a way to protect these structures from further damage. In 2011, the city was announced to be an historic relic under protection. When you see the ruins of Lion City for the first time, the view will take your breath away. So don't forget to hold your breath. Imagine swimming in the dark waters. As you're approaching the city, you see its huge walls and extensive carvings. Marvelous, isn't it? The Cancun Underwater Museum is probably the largest museum of its kind in the whole world. It wasn't lost, per se, but now it's home to an aquatic ecosystem. Who wouldn't want to combine scuba diving and snorkeling with a visit to a world-class garden with 500 sculptures? Placed 30 feet under the surface, these sculptures are made from pH-neutral marine concrete so that they can stay on the ocean floor. Plus, here, the sculptures change over time, unlike in a traditional museum. That's because they become part of the underwater environment and a home to various plant and animal species. In one installation, nearly 450 life-size figurines are grouped together to hint at the harmonious coexistence of humanity. There is also the Anthropocene, which is an actual submerged Volkswagen Beetle placed by the Manchonis Reef. Okay, this is not a lost and found item, but this is just, hey, it's a giant jellyfish and I wanted you to see it. This creature is known as the lion's mane jellyfish, and it's the largest known species of jellyfish. So, I'm happy now. And have you ever discovered anything underwater?
Nearly 140 years ago, some fishermen pulled pieces of a ship from Lake Michigan. But where was the rest of it? From that moment on, hunters spent years searching for the ghost ship. By the 1970s, the hunt reached a new level. One with a $1,000 reward offered to anyone who could find it. Still, nothing. It was as if the vessel had simply vanished into thin air. That is, until now. Researchers have finally found the shipwreck off the coast of Bailey's Harbor, Wisconsin. The ship called the F.J. King disappeared back in 1886. At that time, this 140-foot-long vessel had a very important job: transporting grain. Now you might think, grain? Really? That's it? Okay, sure, it's not like the ship was loaded with tons of gold or jewels. But we have to see the bigger picture. At that time, Wisconsin was known as America's breadbasket. The state produced huge amounts of food, especially wheat. In fact, about 1/6 of the nation's wheat was being harvested there. Farming was booming, and that, of course, meant big money. The F.J. King was part of that golden era.
For about 19 years, it successfully carried and traded grain and iron ore through the Welland Canal. That is, until September 15, 1886. That day, the crew were on their journey to carry iron ore from Michigan to Chicago. It was supposed to be just another routine trip, but they were caught in a powerful storm. The conditions were brutal, with waves nearly 10 feet high. The crew fought desperately to get the water out and keep the ship afloat, but the waves were too strong. They kept coming, one after another. The men worked hard until they couldn't go on anymore. The waves were splitting the ship's seams. At this point, a catastrophe was inevitable. So Captain William Griffin gave the order: abandon ship. They had no choice but to get out. The men grabbed their belongings as fast as they could and climbed into the ship's small yawl boat. It was 2 a.m. Everything around them was dark. As they tried to get closer to shore, the F.J. King went down, bow first. And then suddenly, boom! The crew watched in shock as the ship's stern deckhouse blew off, sending the captain's papers 50 feet into the air. They stayed in the small boat until they were picked up by a passing schooner called La Petite. The crew took them to Bailey's Harbor, and moments later, Captain Griffin filed a wreck report. That's when the real mystery began. In his report, the captain said the ship had gone down about 5 miles off the shore of Lake Michigan. But that was just what he thought. I mean, it wasn't based on any instruments, readings, or anything like that. It was just what he remembered from that night. A week later, though, a local lighthouse keeper spotted the masts of a schooner sticking out of the water, much closer to shore. He reported it to a nearby newspaper, and that's when people really started asking questions. Could that be the F.J. King? Even though they had a solid lead, it didn't take them anywhere. No one could find the boat. Days passed, then months, then years, until 2025. That's when an investigator named Brendan Baylod decided enough was enough. He gathered a team of about 20 scientists and historians to finally track down this historic shipwreck. They dug through hundreds of original documents about the ship and the day it went down, piecing together clues and narrowing down the area where it might be. Many experts were like, "Man, just let it go." And to be fair, they had every reason to feel discouraged. After all, that whole area had already been searched over and over. There was just no way the ship could still be out there. But Bayod didn't give up. Okay, truth is, he also thought it was a long shot. But working to find the ghost ship had other perks. His team wanted to get some hands-on experience with a brand new super advanced sonar. With that in mind, they set out on their mission, heading to Lake Michigan on June 28th. Okay, great. But where do you even start? First, Bayod had to clear something up. Back when the wreck happened, who was actually telling the truth about the ship's location? The captain or the lighthouse keeper? Getting that answer would point them in the right direction. Then, Bayod thought about something that might have already crossed your mind. How could the captain really know where they were? It was pitch black. He'd just been struggling to keep his ship afloat. He couldn't see much. He was exhausted and probably hungry. He definitely wasn't thinking straight. That's when the investigator realized the lighthouse keeper's directions were probably more accurate. Thankfully, he found the newspaper article from 1886. You know, the one I mentioned earlier, where the lighthouse keeper gave a more specific detail about where he'd last seen the ship's masts. What the investigator did next was draw a 2-square-mile grid around that location, and the team decided to map the lake bottom inside that grid using their fancy tech. So, there they were, aboard the shoreline, a tour boat that usually carries sightseers along the peninsula. But that day, they didn't really expect to find anything. Their only goal that afternoon was to test their new side-scan sonar, one with much greater capability than the previous model the crew had been using. But then, after about 2 hours of searching, something strange happened. The sonar was sending out sound waves to map the dark floor of Lake Michigan when it started to act a little differently. And as the images began to stitch together, they revealed a shape that was impossible to mistake. A ship. Bingo. They'd found it. Turns out the wreck was less than half a mile from where the lighthouse keeper had said it would be. At this point, some of the crew had to pinch each other. They couldn't believe their eyes. They were shocked, not only because they'd found the ship so quickly, but also because of how well it was preserved. You see, the investigators were hopeful, but they also thought the ship would be shattered into pieces. After all, it had been carrying iron ore, and the weight of all that metal could have torn it apart even more. But no. To everyone's surprise, the hull was almost completely intact. Sure, the front right side was crushed, but the rest of it was pretty much there. The investigators even found the crew's belongings and kitchenware scattered across the lake bottom. Once they got over the shock, they called in archaeologists to examine the site and create a three-dimensional model of the wreck. This is the 5th major shipwreck Bayard and his team have found in the last 3 years, but the truth is, this region is full of mysteries still waiting to be uncovered. The F.J. King is just one of around 6,000 ships that were damaged or destroyed in incidents across the Great Lakes during the 1800s. And it's estimated that hundreds of these wrecks still remain hidden at the bottom of Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. Thankfully, discoveries like this one could become more and more common. In fact, more shipwrecks are being found today than at any other time in history. Advances in technology have made scanning the lake floor less expensive and more accessible, not just for professionals, but for amateurs too. And the profile of these modern-day shipwreck hunters has changed. Now, they're more often searching for wrecks for their historical value, not just to find treasure. Another project that could help uncover even more wrecks in the Great Lakes is called Lakebed 2030. It could change everything, as its goal is to map the entire lake floor. And right now, only about 15% has been explored. That means the Great Lakes might still be hiding their biggest secrets, and that, at the very least, is super exciting.
How much time passed between the inventions of the first computer and the appearance of the modern one? The first electronic computer in history is the ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. It was invented in 1945 by American scientists. But there's an older machine. It's the Babbage difference engine. English engineer Charles Babbage built it in 1822. This means more than 200 years have passed since the first computer, and we would have thought so if, at the beginning of the 20th century, divers hadn't discovered a computer more than 2,000 years old. In 1900, a group of divers searched for sea sponges in the Mediterranean Sea between the island of Crete and mainland Greece. But instead of sponges, they found sunken treasure ships. It was one of the most significant archaeological finds of that time. At the bottom were Greek marble sculptures and many other artifacts. Among them, divers found a strange piece of stone the size of a large book. They ignored it and put it with other finds in the museum. A few months later, archaeologists began to study the block and discovered that a strange object with bronze gears was hidden inside it. This shocked all scientists because, according to historical data, such things could not exist in ancient Greece. The technologies of that time were not so developed. Scientists started studying this object and realized they had no idea what it was. They called it the Antikythera mechanism, and they had been trying to unravel its purpose for over 100 years. The fragility of the object added complexity. It had been underwater for a millennia. Its internal instruments were damaged, and when scientists touched them, they fell apart. Over many years of research, the object has split into 82 fragments, becoming a real puzzle for scientists worldwide. They found out that it was a machine designed for astronomical calculations. With the help of X-rays, computer tomography, and virtual modeling, people could partially recreate the image of the mechanism. It was a complex structure consisting of 30 rotating gears that turned the dial. The whole mechanism was set in motion with a hand crank. All this was necessary for the ancient Greeks to track the positions of the moon and the sun and calculate the time of eclipses and the Olympic Games. It's as if Silicon Valley was in ancient Greece and the best minds united to create a revolutionary startup. The Antikythera mechanism showed that people in the distant past had excellent knowledge of astronomy and technologies for studying the starry sky. Considering that time, it was not just a machine, but a supercomputer. People entered data into it and got the result after the complex calculations it performed. In 2016, scientists found an inscription on the device containing more than 3,000 symbols. It was something like a manual for use. The text had information about eclipse colors, celestial body movement, and astrological predictions. It was like a reference list of all the events that happened to the planets in the sky. The Greeks realized that all astronomical bodies in the starry sky moved along the same routes. That is, they had orbits close to the plane of motion of our planet around the sun. Ancient astronomers couldn't calculate the path of their movement, so they created the Antikythera mechanism. This was one of its main functions. The researchers found confirmation of this version in the words of the Roman lawyer Cicero. In one of his quotes, there was a mention of a computing machine created by mathematician Archimedes. According to Cicero, the machine could depict the movement of 5 stars called wanderers. At that time, people called celestial bodies that way. Archimedes had lived before the Antikythera mechanism was invented, but perhaps he created the drawings that became the basis of the device. The mechanism worked, and when you turned the handle on it, it rotated the gears in the front and rear parts of the device. And then, the dial showed you the direction of movement of space objects. Besides, the machine had an astronomical calendar inside and tracked the time of sporting events, such as the Olympic Games, and also helped to calculate the exact time of the eclipse. Apparently, the Antikythera mechanism was something like a powerful organizer used by scientists or wealthy citizens of Greece. But what is most unusual is that its creator probably installed the function that changed the observation properties depending on the observer's location. This means that ancient astronomers had to enter different coordinates in different areas for the correct result. NASA computers can do all these things today. These expensive multi-million-dollar devices work with electricity, chips, processors, and thousands of other things. And the ancient Greeks achieved the same result 2,000 years ago with the help of this small device. This changes the idea of the technologies of ancient Greece. People of that time had plumbing and used steam to control some equipment. They were developed, but no one expected them to go so far. Archaeologists were sure that people of ancient times used giant rough gears to operate windmills. And now, it turns out that they could create small and complex mechanisms that modern scientists couldn't figure out for 100 years. Divers continue to study the seabed where the Antikythera mechanism was found. They have already found other items, such as nails from the ship and a bronze ring. Such underwater excavations are dangerous and complicated, so the research takes a long time. Experts think that the Antikythera mechanism was not a single copy. Perhaps the ancient Greeks made the same or similar machines. Maybe they're hidden somewhere or were melted down to create something else. In those days, bronze was a costly metal, so when ancient astronomical computers broke down, people could melt them and sell the metal. Some researchers refer to the Antikythera mechanism as the ancient prototype of all modern devices. Phones, computers, and tablets have something in common with this machine. By the way, have you heard of the odometer device? This device tracks the distance traveled by car or other means of transport. Nowadays, odometers are digital, But this technology used to be mechanical, and the ancient Greeks were the first to invent it. According to some records, Archimedes might have created it. The Roman later adopted this device for use during long journeys to aid in road construction. The ancient Greeks were the first to attempt to understand the rules of geometry. The Babylonians and Egyptians used geometry in different spheres of life. However, the Greeks decided to use logical reasoning to establish the rules and formulas that we still use today. Archimedes observed that when a solid object was immersed in water, it displaced a mass of water equal to the volume of the object. Have you heard of the Hippocratic Oath? This document is read aloud by all doctors before they start practicing medicine. For us, concepts such as confidentiality between a doctor and a patient seem commonplace, as well as a doctor's duty to always try to cure and save people's lives. But all of this was invented by ancient Greek Hippocrates. In addition to the famous oath, he was one of the first to make a scientific leap in medicine. In ancient times, people viewed illnesses as punishment for bad deeds. But Hippocrates discovered that diseases were natural and that the human body could react differently to them. This may seem obvious now, but the ancient Greeks reached this conclusion in 460 BCE. Aristotle was the first to suggest that our planet is a sphere, and thanks to him, we enjoy movies, TV series, and performances. The ancient Greeks invented theater in the form we know it today. Aristotle wrote the first rules of drama in history, which guide directors and screenwriters on how to keep the viewer's attention. Greek writers created plays in various genres, including tragedies, satires, and comedies. All of this contributed to the formation of Western culture, and that's why many directors enjoy staging ancient plays. And this is only a small part of what the Greeks invented. Therefore, it's quite logical that they were able to create the Antikythera mechanism. If you ever had a bad day at work, remember, it could be worse. At least you weren't caught by a 40-ton whale. You didn't spend 30 seconds trapped inside something alive, thinking, well, this is how it ends. Unlike the hero of our story, a lobster diver who became an accidental passenger carried around by a humpback whale. Thankfully, humpback whales can't swallow a human being for real. Not because we're not tasty, but because it's physically impossible. Despite being potentially really huge, their throats are surprisingly narrow, about the size of a grapefruit. When they open their mouths, they can be as big as a small bedroom, roughly 10 feet wide and 8 to 10 feet long. But once closed, there's barely any space inside, and you would end up wrestling with a tongue the size of a car. Also, humpbacks are filter feeders, not hunters. Instead of chewing or biting, they take in huge gulps of water. Then they close their mouths and push that water back out through their baleen plates, basically trapping krill and small fish like a giant living colander made for seafood. If something unexpected ends up inside, the whale says, "Oops, wrong food," and tries to get rid of it. Which was the good news for Michael Packard, a diver who had an encounter in 2021. While diving for lobsters, about 30 feet below the surface, he got ambushed. Suddenly, everything went dark. He felt pressure all around him and realized he was moving upward. He estimates that he spent 30 to 40 seconds inside the whale's mouth before it surfaced, shook around, and spat him out like a dog accidentally biting on a lemon. You see, when the whale realized that Michael Packard was not his dinner, it had to go to the surface. It's the only place a humpback can really spit something out properly. That's because whales are mammals, which means they have more in common with humans than most sea creatures. For example, they don't have gills like fish. Instead, they breathe air through blowholes on top of their heads, which are like giant nostrils. Every few minutes, they have to come up. The fascinating creature takes a breath and exhales a big blast of misty air that looks like a mini fountain. That famous whale spout is just a powerful exhale. Depending on the species, they can stay under the surface for 20 minutes to over an hour. But how is this possible? Basically, their lungs work like oxygen power banks, and their muscles are packed with myoglobin, a special protein that stores oxygen for long dives. When they submerge, their heart rate slows to just a few beats per minute, and blood flow is rerouted to only the organs that really need it. It's like their entire body switches to power-saving mode. And if that isn't impressive enough, humpbacks have a few more ocean superpowers, like being able to sing. And yes, that's the actual scientific term. Male humpbacks produce long pattern sequences of sounds that can last for hours. But they aren't random noises, they're structured, almost musical. Something best described as deep moans and high squeaks. But the coolest part is that these songs can travel for thousands of miles underwater. Sound moves much farther in water than in air, so the ocean becomes one giant concert hall. They can bounce and echo across the ocean, reaching whales miles away like the sea's own radio station. Only male humpbacks are known to sing, and scientists think they do it mainly during the breeding season. Some believe it's a way to attract mates, while others think it helps them communicate or compete with other males. What's amazing is that all the males in one region sing the same song, but it slowly changes over time. Basically, every year the males all sing roughly the same tune, but as the season goes on, tiny variations start to appear. They sing the same song until one of them gets inspired, changes the tune slightly, and this version becomes trendy. Sometimes the whole song gets replaced by a completely new one that moves across the seas from one population to another. Scientists think whales are basically learning from one another, passing new hit singles across the ocean. Humpback whales are known for taking the longest road trips in the animal kingdom. They migrate thousands of miles from cold feeding grounds near the poles to warm waters where they mate and raise calves. And they sure love to eat, sometimes up to 20 hours straight. When the humpback whale accidentally caught Mr. Packard, it couldn't just get rid of him underwater and keep feeding. Humpbacks are built to close their mouths tightly when they dive, so water doesn't rush into their lungs. To open up wide again, release pressure, and breathe, they have to reach the surface. They gulp air, clear their throats, spit out unwanted passengers, and go back to eating like nothing happened. It's actually a cool design from millions of years of evolution. Whales used to live on land long ago. Their ancient ancestors looked a bit like furry hippos that wandered into the ocean. Over millions of years, those animals adapted to life in water. Their legs became fins, their noses slid to the tops of their heads, but they never stopped breathing air. That's how evolution works. It doesn't recreate something from scratch, it adapts what's already there. This evolutionary coincidence was what, in the end, saved Mr. Packard. After the whale spat him out, Packard floated in shock for a few seconds before realizing that everything was fine. His crewmate, who'd seen the whale breach and fling him out, rushed over and pulled him into the boat. Thankfully, aside from bruises, he was fine. The diver was taken to the hospital, treated, and released on the same day. All is well that ends well, and now he has a fascinating tale to retell to his friends. While a humpback whale couldn't swallow Michael, there are a few creatures on Earth that technically could, at least on paper. First on the list, the sperm whale. It's the only animal alive today with a throat large enough to swallow a whole person. They regularly feed on giant squids up to 30 or 40 feet long, so one human wouldn't even count as an appetizer. Luckily for us, sperm whales live in deep waters and only eat squid, fish, and the occasional unlucky shark. Humans aren't even close to the right shape or taste. On the land, we have the reticulated python and the green anaconda, the largest snakes on the planet. These reptiles don't chew, they swallow. A full-grown python can stretch its jaws wide enough to fit a deer or a pig, and an anaconda can take down a capybara. There are unverified reports of them swallowing people, mostly in remote jungle areas. But even if it happened, it would take hours, and the snake would struggle to digest such a big meal. Unfortunately, snakes don't have the same diaphragm or ticklish response like mammals, which means you wouldn't get out of this predicament by tickling the serpent like in a cartoon. And that's about it, lucky for us. Unless we go back in time, way back to prehistoric times, to an age when the oceans and continents were crawling with bigger creatures. Back then, the ocean was a lot more dangerous. The mosasaurus ruled the seas like a super crocodile, and the megalodon, the 60-foot prehistoric shark, could have swallowed you whole without noticing. But land wasn't much safer. There was the Dinosuchus, the giant crocodile, the titan boa, a snake longer than a bus, and the Sarcosuchus, the super croc that made rivers unsafe for anything that moved. Michael Packard lived through a story that sounds perfect for an Instagram reel. He had a unique and dangerous situation and ended up with only bruises and bragging rights. The ocean is full of surprises, but as long as you're not a small fish or a time traveler, you won't end up like Pinocchio, making a campfire inside a large stomach resembling a cave.
Well, here you are. You're getting into your submarine, feeling a bit anxious. You're going to descend hundreds of feet underwater to explore the ocean floor. So many things can go wrong. Technical issues, insane water pressure, dangerous marine monsters, mysterious eerie sounds. Wait, what? Eerie sounds so deep underwater? Yep, a strange humming noise is coming from the ocean depths. What makes it even creepier is that it only appears during dusk and dawn. This noise might act as a dinner bell, since it's likely to have a connection to massive groups of sea creatures moving up and down through the water to feed. But so far, it's just a theory. Using highly sensitive underwater microphones, researchers recorded a mysterious low-frequency hum at depths of 660 to 3,300 feet. The sound wasn't very loud, just 3 to 6 decibels above the usual ocean background noise. For comparison, when someone is whispering in a quiet library, the sound reaches 30 decibels. The underwater noise also had a puzzling or humming quality. The weirdest thing? Despite their efforts, the researchers couldn't pinpoint a single species responsible for the sound. The noise originates in a region known as the twilight zone of the ocean. This region is dark and doesn't have many nutrients, with no sunlight for photosynthesis. Life here relies on organic debris falling from above, such as deceased organisms or waste material. At the same time, while it may sound barren, the twilight zone is far from empty. A 2015 study estimated that up to 90% of the world's fish could live in this zone, including many undiscovered species. Now, back to the mysterious noise. The researchers believe the sound may be linked to the vertical migration of small marine creatures like fish, shrimp, and squid. These animals move upward toward the surface at sunset to feed on plankton and nutrients, using darkness to avoid predators. At sunrise, they return to the depths to hide. This migration, which is one of the largest animal movements on Earth, involves billions of organisms and occurs daily. Scientists suspect that the strange hum might occur during this migration, as a way for the creatures to communicate or coordinate their movements. It might also serve as a signal to indicate when it's safe for a group to go to the surface and feed. If some animals indeed use the hum to communicate, it could help us understand deep-sea life better. The Twilight Zone has always been considered a quiet environment, but such a discovery hints at complex social behaviors and interactions among its inhabitants. But it's not only the ocean that produces bizarre sounds. Earth is humming non-stop too. Unfortunately, you can't hear this soundtrack. This hum isn't from earthquakes. It's produced by subtle ongoing vibrations in the planet's crust. They're too faint for us to feel and can only be detectable with special equipment. Scientists have long known about this phenomenon called free oscillation and have recorded this persistent hum. Earthquakes are the most noticeable ground movements. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Earth experiences about 500,000 earthquakes every year. Of those, only 100,000 are strong enough to be felt, and around 100 cause noticeable damage. But in the quieter moments between earthquakes, the planet is still constantly vibrating with smaller, unnoticeable movements. Unlike the sudden jolts of earthquakes, this hum is steady and uniform, and it's a byproduct of microseismic activity. Seismometers, tools used to record ground vibrations, can detect this sound anywhere on land. For years, researchers have been debating the origins of this hum. Some thought it came from ocean waves reaching deep into the seafloor. Others believed it was caused by colliding waves on the ocean's surface. By 2015, scientists had confirmed that both factors contributed to Earth's constant vibration. And although this hum has been recorded on land, now we also have much clearer, more detailed underwater recordings. To study the hum, researchers used spherical seismometers on the seafloor in the Indian Ocean near an island east of Madagascar. Between September 2012 and November 2013, they placed 57 freefall seismometers across a 772 square mile area. These devices are designed to sink into the ocean floor and record even the faintest vibrations. Over the course of the 11-month study, the team filtered out noise from ocean waves and seafloor currents. They got clear, consistent signals of Earth's hum, with peaks at frequencies between 2.9 and 4.5 MHz, far below the range of human hearing, which starts at 20 Hz. The discovery of Earth's hum from the ocean floor is more than just a scientific curiosity. It gives researchers a new way to study how energy moves through the planet's crust and mantle. In any case, the world around us is filled with weird sounds that sometimes remain unexplained. One of the most intriguing examples is the bloop, an incredibly loud underwater sound recorded in 1997 by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The sound lasted about a minute and began as a low rumble, which then increased in frequency. It was so loud that underwater microphones detected it across an astonishing 3,000 miles. Initially, some experts thought it was the call of a massive unknown sea creature. However, NOAA later determined that the source likely had been the calving of icebergs, when giant pieces of Antarctic glaciers had been breaking off and crashing into the sea. The sound, known as Julia, a strange cooing noise, could have been produced by an iceberg scraping along the ocean floor. Another sound, dubbed train, due to its resemblance to the sound of train wheels on a track, likely originated in Antarctica's Ross Sea. Then there is upsweep, a recurring seasonal scratchy noise detected in the Pacific Ocean since 1991. Despite years of research, its exact cause remains unclear. The underwater world also has bizarre sounds that can be described as choirs of fish. Scientists studying marine life off the coast of Port Hedland in Western Australia discovered that many fish species sing in synchronized choruses at dawn and dusk, much like birds. Over 18 months, researchers recorded tons of sounds, including foghorn-like calls from black jewelfish and rhythmic ba-ba-ba sounds from batfish. These fish songs, which often involve repetitive calls that overlap in large groups, are especially important for breeding, feeding, and territorial behavior. Deeper in the ocean, NOAA researchers also explored the sounds of the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench. They used a titanium-encased microphone that managed to survive the crushing pressure, over 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. Over 23 days, the recorder captured loads of noises, from the haunting songs of whales to the rumble of distant earthquakes. Now, we've already figured out that the ocean is filled with strange sounds, but you can also hear weird noises above ground. One of the most puzzling is the hum, a low-pitched noise reported by people in specific areas, such as Taos, New Mexico, or Bristol, England. The sound is often described as a faint engine-like drone, and its source remains a mystery. Some researchers think it might be a psychological phenomenon, where people focus on subtle background sounds they might otherwise ignore. In any case, no definitive answer has been found yet. Geological formations can sing too. Utah's Rainbow Bridge, a massive 300-foot-high sandstone arch, vibrates like a guitar string when exposed to sounds, distant earthquakes, or waves near Lake Powell. Scientists have studied its frequencies to understand how such vibrations could affect the bridge's stability over time. Interestingly, visitors to the Rainbow Bridge have reported hearing faint humming sounds too. The skies also have their own eerie noises. For centuries, people in polar regions have described faint sizzling, popping, and cracking sounds, accompanying auroras. A Finnish researcher made the first known recordings of these sounds and traced their origin to electrical discharges in the lower atmosphere, about 230 feet above the ground. These charges, caused by magnetic storms fueling auroras, produce faint sounds during calm and clear nights. Other natural phenomena, such as icebergs grinding against the seafloor or volcanic activity on the ocean floor, produce groans, rumbles, and crackling sounds that scientists study to learn about glacial movements and underwater geological activity. I myself produced many unusual sounds and rumbles, but, that's a subject for another video or my next annual review.
Many terrifying animals live deep beyond the waves, like this vampire squid living 3,000 feet below the surface in almost complete darkness. This animal has a cloak, like a vampire's. That's why it's called the vampire squid. Deep down at the bottom, it can't use ink to defend itself. So this animal has developed an unusual tactic. It glows slightly to scare away predators. If this tactic fails, the vampire squid can turn its body inside out, revealing tiny spikes. When you translate its scientific name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, it literally means vampire squid from the nether. Despite its terrifying looks, it's a harmless ocean animal. This previous creature was not from space, but this object definitely is. Before Elon Musk found a way to reuse rockets, NASA would simply drop old ones after launching astronauts into space, most of the time in the ocean or deserts. In 2012, Jeff Bezos launched a mission to find the Apollo 11 rocket. They found it by using sonar, but it was in terrible condition. It was sitting on the bottom of the ocean, not far from the predicted site. They were able to rescue the engine and reconstruct 2 of them. The most famous lost city is Atlantis, but sadly, we still haven't discovered it. However, Heraklion was also just a myth until one British pilot saw something that looked like a city while flying over the Mediterranean Sea. He reported it, and 60 years later, a group of divers went there. They were shocked when they found an entire city underwater. It was loaded with artifacts that could tell us a lot about the history of the place. Now it's one of the best underwater archaeological sites in the world. It's believed that the rising sea caused the whole city to go underwater. The Titanic sank in 1912. The wreck was claimed to be officially discovered 74 years later. In reality, though, a fisherman found the Titanic 8 years earlier while fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. He was pulling out his net when he spotted a head stuck in it. Luckily, it was just a doll's head. Years later, after the fisher had passed away, his son sold the doll to a doll collector. She did a lot of digging and research on every person who had a porcelain toy on the Titanic. She found the owner of the doll. Ava Hart was on the Titanic and had a doll with her. Ava survived the catastrophe by a miracle, but her toy didn't. Hart even wrote about the doll in her journal, and every detail matched the toy found by the fisherman. The tripod fish lives deep in the abyssal zone, around 20,000 feet below the surface. It's adapted to such immense depths and uses its tripod fins to stay still on the bottom. This creature doesn't have big eyes, but even if it did, these eyes would be useless in the darkness. Instead, the tripod fish uses its fins like antennas to detect any movement in the water. This creature doesn't have much luck when it comes to its love life, so it had to develop unique tactics to reproduce. One fish can be both male and female. The next bizarre creature is the lizardfish. It has tons of razor-sharp teeth, a huge mouth, and really big eyes, which it uses for hunting. All this makes the animal look freaky. The lizardfish lives at depths of around 11,000 feet in the midnight zone, where there is zero light. This freak of nature basically eats everything it can fit inside its mouth, from small fish to other lizardfish. On the other hand, When they see other reptile fish, they probably fall in love instead, because finding mates at those depths is not an easy task. Like the tripod fish, the lizardfish can be both male and female at the same time. When you think of a river, you usually picture it on land. Still, nature is quite unpredictable, and it created a river flowing under the ocean in California. It's running at a depth of around 2 miles. This river has everything that an ordinary river has: sunken logs, trees, and rocks. And despite its uniqueness, it's not the only one in the world. There are also others in the Amazon and Greenland. A terrifying creature was discovered near Angola's coast by a remote operating vehicle. It looks like it doesn't have a head or a body. It was sitting at a depth of around 4,350 feet below the surface. After doing research, scientists concluded it wasn't anything from a sci-fi movie. It was just a cluster of siphonophores stuck together. In 2015, some random guy was diving in Caesarea, and something shiny caught his eye. He reached out, grabbed it, and realized it was a gold coin. After that, he examined the bottom and found out that there were many more. He reported the incident to the local authorities, and they concluded that he had found Arabic treasure. The coins were made of solid 24-karat gold and were a few thousand years old, but due to the perfect salinity and temperature, they looked brand new. The coins belonged to a ship carrying cargo. It was caught up in a storm and unfortunately sank. One of the weirdest things ever discovered was found in the Baltic Sea. It's an anomaly that looks as if it was created by a different civilization. It was discovered by Swedish researchers, and they basically had no idea what it was. They had to ask tons of other scientists for their opinions. When you look at this formation from above, it's 200 feet long and looks exactly like a fallen spaceship. It's hard to believe that it's a natural formation, but spoiler alert, it's totally made by nature because the Baltic Sea has gone through many erosions throughout history. Most likely, the bizarre formation is the result of these processes. A group of divers in Madagascar were shocked when they found this 7-foot monstrosity of a knife on the seafloor. The speculation started immediately, and many said that the knife was from some giants that had fought megalodons and lived on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. That could make a nice story, but the knife is most likely a movie prop that was lost at sea. One of the ocean's most bizarre animals is the frilled shark. It's believed that this fish is the reason for all those sea serpent stories that sea explorers of the past wrote about. These animals live pretty deep in the ocean, but sometimes they can be seen in shallow waters. It's super rare, but possible. The frilled shark has a big mouth sporting around 300 teeth. It also has a long body that looks like a lizard's, and it is truly a unique species of shark. Its prey can be half of its size because this shark's stomach is like that of a snake, and it can swallow huge fish or crustaceans. Spotting a few worms in your garden is no big deal, but after seeing a 26-foot long one in the ocean, you will make your wetsuit a little wetter. This worm is super rare, and it's completely harmless to humans. It's actually not a giant worm. It's a cluster of zooids that are stuck together in a worm-shaped formation. They usually only eat plankton, bacteria, and other tiny things that can be found in the ocean. Probably the scariest thing in the ocean that is 100% real is the magna pinna, which can be found at crazy depths of 20,000 feet below the surface. This monster looks like an underwater Slender Man, but it's just a squid with really long tentacles that can reach a terrifying size of 8 feet. This guy has only been seen a few times, and basically, we don't know much about this creature so far.
In the past 30 years, scientists have made an incredible discovery of a new creature living deep beneath the surface of the ocean, and the name of the creature is the harp sponge. Now, if you're wondering why it took so long to come across this animal, then I might have the answer. These creatures typically hang out at a depth of roughly 11,100 feet beneath the ocean's waves. This sponge species was first discovered off the coast of California thanks to a robot that was sturdy enough to explore those crazy depths the ocean has to offer. This is no doubt an area of the planet where even the most benign-looking creatures can be potentially dangerous. But even scientists were surprised to find that this creature was more than just a sponge. Now, this might seem obvious, but the harp sponge got its name because its basic structure, referred to as a vein, is the same shape as a harp. Each vein is made up of a horizontal branch supporting several parallel vertical branches. But don't let the harp sponge's fanciful and amusing appearance or its non-intimidating name fool you. Yeah, the harp sponge is very much a deep-sea hunter. It has a unique ability to capture and envelop small animals using its rhizoids, short, thin fibers. With their help, the harp sponge clings on to the soft, muddy bottom and catches tiny creatures that get swept into its branches by deep-sea currents. Uh-oh. Other sponge creatures often feed by pulling bacteria and bits of organic matter from the seawater and filtering them through their bodies. But not our harp sponge. Instead, it snatches its future meal with minuscule barbed hooks that cover each of the harp sponge's branches. Now, harp sponges prefer tiny crustaceans like crabs, crayfish, shrimps, and prawns. Once the harp sponge has one of them in its clutches, it envelops the animal in a thin membrane before slowly beginning to digest it. So, pal, what's eating you? Oh, Harpo? Too bad. Researchers believe that harp sponges use this method of feeding because there aren't enough nutrients that deep down. This makes traditional filter feeding less effective. Research has shown that the creature is still in the process of evolving. Early harp sponges, researchers found, only had 2 veins, but later, scientists discovered other harp sponges that had 6 veins. The harp sponge might have evolved this elaborate candle holder-like structure to increase its surface area. In general, harp sponges typically grow up to a length of 1 foot, but researchers have seen a creature that was 2 feet in length. The harp sponge is not only very unusual, but also beautiful to look at. See those tiny white balls on top of the branches? Now, why don't we look at some other creatures that live below the photic zone of Earth's oceans? The photic zone means the area beneath the ocean's surface that still receives some sunlight. Thanks to this, there are loads of different creatures and organisms living there. Any animal living beyond this layer qualifies as a deep-sea creature. The Tomopterus worm is a segmented worm you can find in the twilight zone of the ocean. This is the area that lies between 650 and 3,300 feet beneath the surface. These creatures are often no more than 1 inch long, but the largest of them can grow up to 1 foot. While swimming around and feeding, these worms do what researchers describe as an amazing smooth dance. That's because the creatures can swim extremely quickly and maneuver at tight angles with ease. Now, I know most people hear the word worm and think of the common earthworm, so it's quite interesting to know there's a deep-sea worm out there that never leaves the water during its entire life. Similarly, most of us try to avoid jellyfish that either rest on the sand or sit on top of the ocean waves. This isn't the case with a chrysota jelly. That's a deep-sea creature too. This beautiful jellyfish is mostly ruby red, bright orange, or electric purple. That's what helped researchers realize they had found a new species of jellyfish. The creature grows to a maximum size of 1 inch across. It has tentacles that stretch out in every direction. Now, if you come close to this jellyfish, it'll pull all these tentacles in toward its body before rapidly swimming away to avoid danger. Yes, you are dangerous. The chrysota jelly is extremely rare. You won't see it very often. You might need to borrow that deep-sea diving robot I mentioned earlier. While worms and jellyfish might seem quite harmless, this isn't the case with the Pacific viperfish. Ooh. This creature is equipped with a noticeably big mouth, like me, and the needle-like teeth inside are key to its hunting strategy. Pacific viperfish live at around 5,000 feet below the ocean surface, but they're among those numerous marine animals that migrate each night from the ocean depths toward shallower waters to dine. What's on the menu for dinner tonight? lots of small fish and shrimp. The creature can grow up to 12 inches in length. Its two front fangs, which stick up from the fish's bottom jaw past its own eyes, are especially dramatic. When the fish unhinges its jaw, its mouth can open wide enough to engulf smaller animals, and the teeth form a cage to prevent an escape. Now, have you ever seen an underwater creature that looks like a strawberry? Trust me, it does exist. Just look at these dots on the strawberry squid. The creature has a big eye and a smaller one. You might think this unconventional pairing would be awkward and uncomfortable, but it's actually the opposite. The big left eye looks upward. It spots shadows cast by other animals in the dimly lit waters above. The eye's tubular shape helps it collect as much light as possible. On the other side of the squid's head, you can see its right eye. It's small and looks downward. This eye searches for flashes of bioluminescence produced by animals lurking in the darker waters below. Now, bioluminescence means the production and emission of light by living organisms. By the way, the squid has a nickname. And no, it's not Squiggy, although that's a great one. It's known as the cockeyed squid. This is simply due to the remarkable difference in size between its two eyes. I think I like Squiggy better, and so it goes. Since light doesn't reach the deep sea, the strawberry squid's body actually looks black. This helps the creature hide from enemies, such as sharks and dolphins. In general, the strawberry squid grows to a length of 5 inches. It typically lives around 3,000 feet below the surface, but floats to shallower waters at night. Now, the feather star is a marine creature without a backbone, but with feather-like arms that radiate from the center of its body. These creatures first appeared around 200 million years ago. Related to sea stars, they look like a flower, but if you approach them, they'll quickly swim away. But not all feather stars can swim. Many species can only crawl along the bottom of the seafloor. Like some of the other deep-sea creatures we've looked at, the feather star can adapt to its surroundings. It has a creepy ability to shed its arms, the same way some lizards can shed their tails. This also helps them escape from their enemies. Feather stars live all across the globe, from the equator to the poles, from the shallow waters on top of reefs to the deep, deep sea. Now, given that we're dealing with mysterious creatures, the name of this one is quite fitting. The swift vampire squid should be the official symbol of life in the deep sea. The animal has a dark red body, huge blue eyes, and a cloak-like web that stretches between its 8 arms. This, along with its name, may suggest that the creature is some form of a terrifying hunter. In reality, though, the vampire squid is a soft-bodied, timid creature, about the size, shape, and color of a football. It grows to roughly 12 inches in length and lives 3,000 feet below the waves. There's almost no oxygen there, but also relatively few predators. Whew, I think I'll need to decompress from this one.
What's the scariest predator under the ocean? The crocodile? I don't think so. Loch Ness Monster? Please, it never existed. How about the Kronosaurus? Well, it is extinct, but you might be onto something. Let's take a look at what it'd be like if these creatures were still around today. First things first, what on earth was it? The Kronosaurus was a marine carnivore that lived in the cool, high-latitude Eromanga Sea. It covered vast areas of inland Australia between 90 and 120 million years ago, during the early Cretaceous period. Near-complete fossils of the creature were also found near Colombia, which is a country that has a noted connection to prehistoric reptiles and turtles. This fact makes it extremely possible that the monster I'm about to describe existed worldwide. You might have heard saurus and thought, oh, it's a dinosaur. But these were actually reptiles. They were the largest member of the Pleosauroidea family, referred to as plesiosaurs. Fossil evidence suggests they weighed over 20,000 pounds and were roughly 30 feet in length. Just to put that in perspective, the longest crocodile ever measured was a saltwater crocodile by the name of Lolong from the Philippines. It was 20 feet in length and weighed just under 2,500 pounds. And that's still 10 feet shorter and incredibly lighter than the average Kronosaurus, making the crocodile seem like nothing more than a glorified goldfish in comparison. Despite its terrifying length, the most physically daunting feature of the Kronosaurus was its head. Its skull was about 8 feet long, which was actually proportionally large given the size of its body length. Anything that was unfortunate enough to end up inside the Kronosaurus's mouth may have been given false hope. After all, the teeth of the beast weren't actually that sharp. On second thought, I take that back. I wouldn't feel confident around a toothless snake, let alone being inside the mouth of this monster. But it's true that the Kronosaurus's teeth weren't sharp, especially when compared to other carnivorous reptiles, such as crocodiles and alligators. The teeth of this prehistoric sea creature were instead conical. This means that they were cone-like in shape. Unfortunately, this lack of sharpness didn't make them less dangerous. The teeth were enormous and could be up to 12 inches long from the crown tips to the bottom of the roots. This obviously meant that the Kronosaurus had an extremely powerful bite. It was estimated to be up to 30,000 newtons, which is almost twice as powerful as the bite of a large saltwater crocodile. Because of the bluntness of their teeth, they weren't suited for twisting their prey once in their grasp. But the size and shape of the teeth made them perfect for simple open and shut biting. They would have had no problem crushing hard objects such as the toughest of shells any sea turtle could offer. Just like crocodiles, the Kronosaurus is believed to have had a short neck. This may have been an adaptation to allow the beast to successfully catch small, evasive animals. Their body, in general, was fusiform and streamlined. This means it was narrowed at both ends and had very little resistance to the flow of water. The Kronosaurus was also equipped with 4 paddle-like limbs. The hind limbs were larger than the front ones. They could span approximately 7 feet in diameter. All in all, this set the Kronosaurus up to effortlessly propel itself through the waters and be an ultimate predator. Predator X, if you will? That's the name that was given to the fossil of a creature discovered near Svalbard, a Norwegian island group, in 2009. The fossil was identified as a 50-foot-long, 100,000-pound monster with a bite force of 33,000 pounds per square inch. This might be the highest bite force of any known animal. Although Predator X is yet to be classified as any specific type of animal, it was definitely a plesiosaur like the Kronosaurus. And even if it wasn't Predator X, the Kronosaurus was still most definitely a ferocious titan when it roamed Earth's oceans. The Kronosaurus actually got its name from the Greek mythological figure of Cronus, the father of Zeus. Cronus was viewed as a titan from a generation of super powerful beings. So what was it that the Kronosaurus, this terrifying monster, actually feasted on to satisfy its appetite? This creature was known to eat sea turtles, squid, and other larger marine reptiles of that time, such as elasmosaurids and ichthyosaurs. This suggests that if crocodiles existed in the realms of the Kronosaurus, they too might have turned into lunch for the beast. There's evidence from the fossil remains of the Kronosaurus that suggests that they also feasted on sharks, which I know is a disappointment to those of you who view that beast as the king of the ocean. Not when the Kronosaurus was around, my friend. In any case, grounding all kinds of food into small pieces to help digest them would have been difficult without small teeth. This explains the presence of rounded stones found in many of the remains of these sea creatures. Researchers believe these stones may have been swallowed to control buoyancy or to help process food. It's also entirely possible they were accidentally swallowed while feeding on other animals from the seafloor. As if the Kronosaurus even needed to be a meanie with its already existing power and size, there's also evidence to suggest that it indeed might have been. It turns out that after using all its impressive attributes to catch its dinner, the Kronosaurus first liked to play with its food, like a cat does with a mouse. I guess since the hunt was so easy for them, they needed to get their fun from somewhere else. Well, I think now you should have a good idea about these creatures. So let's ask ourselves what it would be like if they were still around today. And by the way, why aren't they? Well, the Kronosaurus was completely finished off by the same KT meteor that took out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But even before this catastrophic event, they were coming under increased pressure from an even bigger and more vicious family of carnivorous marine reptiles known as mosasaurs. You can't always be a top dog, I guess, or rather, top marine reptile. But what if this never happened, and they were still roaming Earth? Well, this might be obvious, but can you imagine what kind of impact that would have on sea tourism? Based on the impact that famous movies about sharks and killer whales had, what do you think the presence of a Kronosaurus in the ocean would do to beaches? The very creature that would eat sharks and whales for breakfast. Beaches would certainly become a great place to go for a quiet walk, because nobody else would even be there. And what about such activities as boating, surfing, and scuba diving? You think anyone would dare try them, knowing that this 30-foot beast could be lurking beneath them? Let's give humans some credit and assume most of them wouldn't. This would cripple the global sea tourism industry, which is responsible for earning roughly $143 billion every year. Just to make sure this shocking point hits home, the most expensive yacht to ever roam the ocean was called the History Supreme. Its master bedroom was believed to have a statue made of T-Rex's bone and a wall made of meteorite rocks, as well as a 24-karat gold panoramic wall aquarium. Anyway, this yacht was worth nearly $5 billion, meaning you could buy 38 of them with the money lost in potential damages to sea tourism caused by the Kronosaurus. I'm sure that the yacht's owner was happy the beast never made an appearance in their luxurious aquarium. So luxurious, in fact, that some people believe the History Supreme, reportedly owned by some business genius from Malaysia, never even existed. Rumor has it that it was simply an elaborate hoax fabricated by the supposed designer. Anyway, I don't think the trouble would just stop there. People could actually be in serious danger, regardless of being near the ocean or not. No, I'm not about to tell you that this thing would grow legs, adapt to living on land, and start picking us off one by one. At least, I hope not. I'm just going to point out the damage that the Kronosaurus would inflict through its devastating impact on sea trade. In America, ocean transit accounts for 76% of national trade. On top of this, more than 100 vital pharmaceutical products originate in the sea. I'll also state the obvious and point out that the ocean is a huge food source for us humans. The presence of the Kronosaurus could have a great impact on our relationship with the ocean, something we usually take for granted.